let's start with what we have to discuss here today. So, first thing first, why are we here? What is the agenda of this workshop? What are the areas that we'll be targeting? And how would I help you in your Prelims 2025 journey? All of us are aware that prelims are around the corner, and I'm sure most of you are now shifting gears into prelims, which you rightly should. So if you have been preparing for mains all this while, this is the right time. January onwards, you should be focusing on your prelims. Reason is pretty simple. The competition is getting tougher. Gone are the days when we used to prepare for maybe 2 months and prelims were sorted. You can't do that anymore because the competition is getting tougher, and I'm sure all of you want to write mains because otherwise the journey ahead comes to a standstill. So wise people would shift their gears into prelims, but at the same time make sure that you devote an hour or two for your mains preparation also. Maybe keep revising your optional, or if you have not finished it, make sure you give time to it, maybe 1 or 2 hours every day. But definitely we should now shift our gear to prelims. So I call it as the polity masterclass. The idea is not to teach you anything here, but to tell you what should be your way ahead, how should you master this aspect of your preparation, and what should be the priority areas that you should focus on. Because now, of course, you can't just rely on exhaustive preparation. You have to make sure that you do less but you score more. So herein the element of your start smart preparation will come into picture. So, first thing first, why do I want you to prioritize polity? Now, of course, because I teach polity, because I am a student and a teacher of polity for 12 years now. No. The reason is pretty simple. See, you have to prepare all the areas, core subjects for your prelims. There's no doubt about it. You have to prepare modern history also, economy also. Every teacher will come and tell you कि भैया हमारा subject ज़्यादा important है and you must do it. And I understand where it comes from. But I'll give you some valid logical reasons as to why investing in polity will give you good returns. See, every year, handful of questions do appear from polity. Of course, this is more of a trend-based analysis. There has been a year where only 7 questions were there, but last year we kind of analyzed more than 18 questions were there from polity. So even if we go by the average standards, you should be expecting around 12 to 15 questions from polity. But that is not the reason enough why I want you to prioritize polity. One aspect of is definitely the number of questions that you get in your prelims. But at the same time, if you look at the nature of questions that are asked, they are pretty much doable. Meaning, if you follow standard sources, if you complete them nicely, if you revise them, and if you're good with your strategy, in most probability, you should be able to answer all the questions that have been asked, except for one or two, maybe, which might not hit up from the basic sources. But otherwise, preparing for polity has huge returns simply because we know where to prepare it from. And once you complete those sources, you are sure to answer the question that appear in prelims. So the element of predictability with polity is huge, and if you can predict something in your prelims, I think you should not leave that subject to fate or to luck or to maybe just one reading and not enough revisions. So I think my idea of why should you be prioritizing polity is clear with everyone. Can I get a yes or a no? The reason that would like to list on the top of everything is because the number of questions are huge, and the second is the questions are doable. If you're good with your structure, if you're good with your preparation and your revision, in all probabilities, you'll be able to answer the questions correctly. So that's why should you be prioritizing polity. Now let us talk about what are the focus areas of this session. So what I've decided is we'll be talking about 5 important aspects in this session. And I'll be telling you how these aspects have to be covered. I'll also be providing you with certain handouts so that the session makes more sense to you, and you can go back and kind of look at it again. So the 5 areas that we'll be talking about is how do you master the static portion? Because come what may, a huge number of questions appear from the static area. Second, we'll be talking about how do you cover this static area so that you get maximum impact. Now, my idea would not be to tell you कि यार ये 5 chapters तुम लोग कर लो बाकी तुम्हें करने की जरूरत नहीं. I don't believe in that because ideally you should not be leaving anything because UPSC, as they say, is unpredictable. So they can ask you a question on Northeast Council which was never asked before. So leaving any chapter just because it appears at the end of Lakshmikant is not a good idea. However, a smart student should know what topics to prioritize. So what I've done is, after a thorough reading of last 15 years questions, I have divided your Lakshmikant ke chapters into three areas. One we call as the high priority areas, one as the medium priority areas, and one as the last. Ma'am, how late am I? Rishi, like 2-3 minutes. We have not discussed anything serious. We've just talked about why at all should we prioritizing polity. And to sum it up for you, there are two reasons for the same. One, we get a lot of questions from this particular topic. And the second primary reason is, once you prepare polity, you're sure that the returns are huge. तो धोखा नहीं देती आपको पॉलिटी, दैट्स व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से. एंड यू शुड डेफिनेटली बी इन्वेस्टिंग इन पीपल एंड सब्जेक्ट्स हु आर ट्रू टू यू, लॉयल टू यू. So this is one subject which will stand loyal to you till you give your interview. So that is why I ask you to invest in polity. Anyway, so then I'll be telling you how do you divide and streamline your syllabus into three important categories. More on this in quite some time. The third part of the session, we'll be talking about how do you see a lot of questions which appear to be static but are actually derived from current affairs. And these are the areas which you can actually predict beforehand. For example, everyone kind of predicted that there would be a question on ethics committee. But many people were like, ठीक है यार, एक बार पढ़ लिया, it's okay. But remember, polity needs a lot of memorization also. कोई आपसे कुछ भी कहे, it is definitely a blend of concepts plus memory. Absolutely. There were questions on how many times delimitation commission has been formed. You have to memorize it. So there is a good element of memorization, and of course, quite a few elements that will need conceptual clarity as well. Then we'll be talking about the trend that has been seen in last 4-5 years. That is, there are questions around concepts. For example, basic structure, natural justice, or there are questions around doctrines. For example, doctrine of colorable legislation. Now, this is one area, my dear students, where Lakshmikant is not enough. So what I mean to say is, you need to go beyond Lakshmikant for this particular area. But then again, we have to be very smart. We have to utilize our time correctly. So I'll be telling you how you can prepare these doctrines and concepts so that you don't miss out on those 2-3 questions as well. Who can actually give you an edge in clearing prelims. 2-3 questions की importance वो लोग जानते हैं who have missed prelims by a whisker. So we want to ace those 2-3 questions as well. Finally, of course, Abhijit sir had taken a very good webinar, and many of you attended that, where he talked about how to utilize PYQs. So I'll not be very repetitive here, but I'll be talking polity specific as to how you can make maximum utilization of your PYQs and why they are important. And of course, how do you make use of mock test as well. So this is going to be the flow of the webinar. We'll take one portion, we'll complete that. I'll ask you whether we are on the same page or not, or if you have any questions. Then we move to the second aspect, then third, and that's how we'll be covering all the important aspects of our preparation. So first thing first, how do you master the static? Now, what I've seen in my teaching career of 8 years now, but very specifically for UPSC 6 years now, everybody has a question as to what can I do differently? What sources should I do, ma'am, जो कोई नहीं कर रहा? मुझे वो source बताओ जो अलग हो. Now, this is the problem. You believe you have to do something extraordinary in order to clear your prelims. And this is where the first problem starts. So you start hoarding a lot of resources. You would buy Lakshmikant also, you would buy DD Basu. There's some booklet in the market which tells you that we'll be consolidating Lakshmikant for you. So you go and buy that also. 2 महीने बाद राजेंद्र नगर का चक्कर लगा रहे हैं, and you saw, okay, clear polity using this booklet, 100-page booklet. So you buy that also. Now that is a recipe of failure. That's a big disaster, let me tell you. Because for static, actually ordinary is awesome. Remember this phase and you're good to go. Now, what do I mean by ordinary is awesome? See, understand this. There are some sources, there are some subjects who have clear sources, and your questions actually come from those sources. And for your polity, there are 3 sources that you can absolutely rely on. And if you master these 3, trust me, you don't need anything else. You actually don't need anything else if you are very thorough with these 3 books. कौन सी बुक्स की मैं बात कर रही हूँ? आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एट वर्क, विच इज योर क्लास 11th NCERT. I'm talking about political theory, class 11th NCRT, ignored book, but a very, very important book. This is where questions on liberty and freedom came from. This is where verbatim questions came from. For last 10 years इस book में से question आते हैं. I don't know why people take this book for granted. And of course, you don't take this for granted, I know. So most of you actually work on your Lakshmikant very nicely, which is a good thing. So what I'm trying to say here is for your static, you don't need n number of books. Lakshmikant in itself is a big challenge. So those of you who have read Lakshmikant and maybe revised it or maybe went back to again must have realized that every time you read Lakshmikant, you do have a question in your mind. So the other day I received a message in my email whereby somebody was asking me, ma'am, I was reading the budget chapter and there is a line which says that the legislature cannot increase taxes. So I am confused. What do we mean by this? Why is the parliament not authorized to increase taxes? हम तो देखते हैं taxes बढ़ती है. So we see every year budget corporate tax increase होता है, n number of taxes increase. But Lakshmikant says the legislature cannot increase taxes. So what do you mean by that? What do we mean that parliament cannot increase taxes? Now, interestingly, if you leave it there and a question appears, then you'll fail to answer this question. But when you read between the lines, you understand that Lakshmikant is correct in saying so. So the idea is taxes are proposed by the executive. All of us are aware of this, that the budget is proposed by the executive. So the tax increment can be proposed by the executive. The parliament is not supposed to increase the rate that is presumed by or proposed by the executive. The parliament can suggest a cut in it, but cannot suggest an increase in the same. Why? Because this prerogative of increasing proposal can be done only by the executive. Parliament उसमें क्या कर सकता है? Can suggest a cut but cannot increase it. And that is why Lakshmikant tells you that parliament is not it is not the prerogative of the parliament to increase the taxes. Now this can be a one liner in your prelims, and that's where you kind of miss out reading between the lines. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, instead of reading 7-8 books, instead of buying that booklet from the market, please master the books that you already have. Make sure you're very thorough with Indian Constitution at work. Make sure you're very thorough with your political theory. And of course, you have to be very, very good with M. Lakshmikant. कोई भी आपसे कह रहा है ये book अब redundant है, नहीं है, it is written in a fashion that if you master this, you will not lose out on questions in prelims. Of course, there can be an year where there can be bouncer questions. 3-4 question ऐसे आ सकते हैं. But that is for everybody. And that is why I tell you that the key to clearing prelims is not to do anything extraordinary. You have to clear that cutoff. So if what everybody is doing, you master that, you already are in the race, and there are huge chances that you can be you can be in safe zone of getting those marks where you clear your prelims. So please remember, ordinary is awesome. Stick to your sources, and please don't miss out on this book, my dear students. The conceptual questions that I'm talking about can be answered if you read this book nicely. So 3 in total. 1. We will talk about doctrines and related concepts. Don't worry, Lalit. Don't worry. Just give me some time. We are going one by one. So Pavitra has a question, ma'am. Should we read NCRT from class 6? Not required now. At the time that you're sitting, I'm assuming you're done with your basic classes. थोड़ा बहुत आप लोगों ने पढ़ाई करी है, तभी you're aiming to write your prelims 2025. So if yes, I suggest don't waste your time reading your NCRTs from class 6. बिल्कुल background नहीं है, know nothing in polity, कुछ भी civics का नहीं आता. Maybe you can start from class 9th, but not from 6th definitely. And not required, trust me. And if you already know a few things, I've attended a few classes or maybe prepared something, these 3 sources are more than enough. More than enough. Focus on mastering them rather than losing out your focus on other things that are available in the market. See, it gets very easy. Tempting hota hai bahut. If you travel to Mukherjee Nagar or ORN today, there are so many resources that you get tempted. Yeah, maybe this will make my life easy. Maybe this will make my life easy, but nothing is going to make your life easy. You have to do the boring stuff in order to clear prelims. The boring stuff is reading Lakshmikant again, the 4th time or the 5th time. That's where the boring stuff lies. So please prepare yourself for doing the boring stuff, for doing the ordinary, because as I said, ordinary is awesome. Now, so the second part of our discussion would be the strategic coverage for maximum impact. Now, what do I mean by this and why I have taken this up? So I told you have to master your static area. I've discussed this with you already कि static area को आपको master करना है. But how do you do it? Because Lakshmikant is a bulky book and you have n number of subjects to cover. You have to do your history also, you have to do your geography also. So here is where we can help you. And here is where I have devised a strategy for you whereby we divide the chapters of Lakshmikant into three areas. We call them the high priority areas, the medium priority areas, and the low priority areas. So let me give a disclaimer here. I do not mean to say that you don't have to prepare medium and low priority areas. Before you take me wrong and before you quote me anywhere, let me tell you the idea here is not to tell you कि medium or low priority छोड़ देना. Don't do it. No. What I mean to say is, while you're preparing, you have to be absolutely sure that these topics you know in and out. You're completely thorough with the high priority areas. Point number one. Once you're done with them, once you know that you can't make any mistakes in the high priority area, that's where you move to the medium priority areas. Once you're done with the medium priority areas, that's when you move to the low priority areas. I repeat, the idea is not to miss anything, but to strategically plan your preparation in a manner in which if one question, two, three questions are asked from this area, you know you're not going to make any mistakes in here. So, what do I mean by high priority areas? And how do we reach at these high priority areas? See, there are the major source of consolidating these high priority topics are the questions which have been asked in recent years. So we can go back to last 10 years and we can analyze ये काम आप भी कर सकते हैं. As some of you are asking in the chat box, can we prepare on our own or can we take some coachings? See, the answer is pretty simple. I won't say you can't prepare on your own. But the point here is how much time do you have to devote? And if somebody else can make your life easy and if your pocket allows, then it's definitely a good idea to sign up for a coaching program. Simple reason, not that you can't prepare on your own, you can do it. But how teachers can help you or a strategized strategy can help you or institutes can help you is they can cut down on the time. So for example, the prelims 360 program that UPSC prep is coming up, the idea is to give you all this and all you have to do is take it and revise. So that saves on your time. Of course, the call is yours. So anyway, these topics that we have planted for you here are the areas where a lot of questions have been asked repeatedly. I'll also be providing a PDF of the same. The team will provide you the PDF of these listed topics, which will be divided into three categories: high priority areas, medium priority areas, and low priority areas. For example, there have been a number of questions from preamble every year, verbatim questions. So I always tell my students ki preamble though you should be memorizing in and out. They should the text of the preamble should be on your fingertips. So preamble, committees, fundamental rights, DPSPs, fundamental duties, you have to memorize. There is no two way about it. So again, the chapter on parliament being very important, the chapter on federal structure being very important, questions around UPSC, CAG, you have to prepare them. So as I said, there is no point discussing every topic in here. We don't want to make the webinar go on and on and on. I'll be giving you a comprehensive list of this categorization as I've already mentioned here, and it will be shared with you after the webinar. So how do you utilize it? While you're sitting to revise your Lakshmikant, tell yourself that I'll first be revising the high priority areas, not necessarily in a chronological order. They might not appear in chapter 1, 2, 3 in your Lakshmikant, but make sure you'll sit and say कि मुझे पहले high priority topics को अच्छे से कर लेना है. Make sure you try and solve a few questions from the topics that are high priority areas. And once you're sure that, okay, this portion of my preparation is absolutely awesome, then you move on to the medium priority areas. And then towards the end of you move to the low priority areas. कुछ भी छोड़ना नहीं है, but इस तरह से you have to prepare. Okay. So just to tell you about the program that we are coming up with, which you might have seen on the various social media platforms. It is called the Prelims 360 program, which includes mentorship also. So how have we designed this program? Will not take much time. I'll just quickly tell you about this program in the next 5 minutes. So we'll be covering entire GS and CSAT. So it's a holistic coverage, point number one. Second, all of us are aware how important current affairs are for your UPSC examination. Last year's paper was dominant on the side of static. So going by the predictions, you might see a current affairs heavy paper this time. Nevertheless, ऐसा कोई पेपर नहीं होता जिसमें करंट अफेयर्स पूछते नहीं है. Even if there are static questions, even if 2024 was static heavy, a lot of questions were derived from what was going on in current affairs, and I'll show you with proof. Then, of course, we have subject experts here, people who have cleared this examination, who are rank holders or have been to one or two stages of this exam, have appeared for interviews, written mains. We also have onboarded some ex-rankers who will help you learn these concepts. Also, you don't have to sign up for a test series separately. So there are tests have been embedded in this program only, which covers it. So some of you were asking कि मैम मुझे NCERT पढ़नी है क्या? So in case you've missed reading NCERTs, we have made sure that we cover NCERT as well, the questions from NCERT as well. We have designed it in a way where we'll be giving you sectional tests. So there may be some people who might not be very good with economy. Some might be a little weak in polity. So accordingly, you can, kind of devise कि मेरा ये section इतना अच्छा नहीं है, and maybe repeated test you can attempt for your sectional subject. And of course, we have full length test as well that help you analyze your exam preparation and also prepare for the same. The idea is not just to help you analyze, but to help you prepare. Also, of course, we know the importance of CSAT. I know personally many people who lost out on prelims just because they couldn't clear CSAT. So whether you sign up for the program or not, irrespective of the fact, please, please, please do your CSAT nicely. Don't take it lightly. People are missing out on writing mains just because they did not focus on CSAT. So we have ensured that CSAT is included in this Prelims 360 program. And I repeat, even if you sign up or you do not, you take your call, but please make sure that you prepare your CSAT nicely. Finally, a very unique feature has been integrated into the program, that is one-on-one mentorship, which helps you gauge what are the gaps in your preparation, where are you lacking, rankers ने क्या सही किया था जो आप नहीं कर रहे हैं, and maybe what you can improve at your end. So this batch is starting from 1st of January, and if you have any queries, of course, you can reach out. The team, they are very swift in replying to your emails, so maybe you can reach out to them whenever you feel like. Coming back to the areas that we were discussing. So ये मैंने आपसे कहा था at the beginning that we'll be talking about why static is important and how do you master it. Now I'm coming to the third leg of this webinar, which is what is the importance of current affairs in polity, and how do you see current affairs being the base for the static questions that have been asked in your prelims examination. This is both interesting as well as important. Why I call this important is this helps you predict 2 to 3 questions that appear every year. For example, if you look at this question from Prelims 2024, which was an ethics committee, we can kind of conclude that this is a static question. Simple बात है, आपसे committee के बारे में पूछा है, लक्ष्मीकांत में दिया हुआ है. They've asked you whether it is an ad hoc committee or how many members are there. Can the committee take up certain matters or not? So in the cursory reading or when you take a look at it, it appears as to this question is a static question. But if you have been following current affairs, you know that ethics committee was in news. Yes. So some of you have written yes. So ethics committee was in news, and after the Mohina Mitra case, there was a lot of talk about the ethics committee. There were articles. The Hindu, the Indian Express covered in detail about ethics committee. So of course it was expected out of you that you go back, take out your Lakshmikant and revise the ethics committee portion so that if there is a question, you are able to answer it. So what I'm trying to tell you is it might appear as a static question, but if you have been reading your newspaper, तो आपको करना क्या था? As soon as you've been reading ethics committee or the monthly magazine mentioned ethics committee, you should have quickly went to your Lakshmikant and revised the portion on ethics committee. That's point number one. If you look at this question again, Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. Okay, the talk of the town. All throughout the year, we were talking about Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam because it was long due, long pending. Women reservation was talked about. Everybody was discussing it. It finally came into picture. So it was not very difficult to read this. And if somebody missed out on it, then definitely they need to question themselves as to are they on the right track in their preparation or not. Because any new amendment that comes up any bill that makes news or any act that has been important around the year has to be prepared in detail, and not just a cursory reading of the same, because a cursory reading might not might make you answer one or two statements out of the three, but you might miss out on the third one. For example, many were not sure that this act will come into when would this act come into operation, or is it already into picture or not, or is it applicable to Rajya Sabha also or not. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, whenever there is a judicial judgment, and I'll tell you what are the areas in current affairs that you focus in, don't take a cursory reading of these topics. Don't just tell yourself and make yourself believe कि मुझे ये आ गया by one reading. Spend time with it, look at the facts, try to memorize the facts, because the questions that come up are quite predictable with regards to the current affairs in polity domain. So what are the areas that I should focus on? And I'll tell you 5 areas that should be your focus when I talk about current affairs. One, if there is any bill that is in news. Why I say bill is it's still in the process of maybe getting passed from both the houses, but there's a lot of talk around it. So, what is the core component of that bill? Go and read about it. Maybe you can just Google it, or you can go to PRS, just take a reading of it, or you can use any other website that has compiled it for you if you want to save time. अगर कोई इंपॉर्टेंट एक्ट पास हुआ है, you can't leave it. You have to make sure that you know it in and out. Then, if there is any judicial judgment, for example, this year there can be a question on subcategorization. So, what is subcategorization? I'll go back and read Article 15. I also need to go back and read Article 16 to see what Article 15 and Article 16 talks about subcategorization. Do they permit this subcategorization or not? What is the judicial judgment with regards to it? So if there is any important judicial judgment, not only you read that judgment nicely, but any constitutional provisions that have been mentioned in that judgment. अगर उस judgment में कोई भी constitutional provision आया है, you have to go back and read it and make sure that you know those concepts very, very well. Finally, any scheme, of course, ये current affairs में आपको पढ़ाया भी जाएगा if you sign up for the Prelims 360 program. There's an entire day dedicated to schemes and programs. In case you're not joining it or not joining any other program for that matter, make sure you prepare government schemes nicely. पिछले 2 साल से बहुत ज़्यादा questions नहीं पूछे हैं, but there is always a chance of schemes reappearing. They have been important and they are going to be important. Committees and commission. Any committee that is in news, any commission that is in news, what was it formed for, what was the major idea that it came about with, you have to prepare that. Finally, if there is any constitutional amendment, very, very, very important, any constitutional amendment that comes up has to be prepared thoroughly. You can't miss it. This is one area which I call as the highly predictable area, because बहुत ज़्यादा constitutional amendment तो होंगे नहीं, we know that. So if there is an amendment, make sure you know it in and out. So to summarize, what are going to be the focus areas? The bills, the acts, judicial judgments, scheme, committee and commission. If there are any constitutional amendments, you have to take up. So some of you say, ma'am, कुछ example दीजिए, मुझे कैसे पता चलेगा that this is the static area that I have to prepare for my prelims 2025. Let me give you 5 examples to explain how do you derive it. So there was a lot of talk recently about the removal of vice president. A no confidence motion was introduced. A lot of articles again came up. Everybody was debating कि सही किया opposition ने या नहीं किया. Even if you don't go into the debate, take out your Lakshmikant and just see what is the majority required for removal of vice president. What is the procedure for the removal of vice president? Easy to miss out. That can it be, is it the removal in the capacity of chairman of Rajya Sabha or in the capacity of vice president? Do you require special majority or do you require effective majority? So go back, take out your Lakshmikant and go back and revise the chapter on vice president with special focus on what is the procedure for removal of vice president. Can he take part in the proceedings of the house? Can he vote in the first instance? If not, can he vote if there is a tie? Ask yourself all those questions and make sure that you know this topic in and out and you're sorted. Okay. Then recently, Supreme Court gave us very detailed guideline with regards to death penalty. So this should ring a bell in my head ki, okay, let me go back and ask myself, what is a mercy petition? Everybody is talking about mercy petition. What is this mercy petition? While I'm reading my mercy petition, I should also take out and read what is curative petition or what is review petition for that matter. Then I should ask myself, what are the pardoning powers of the president with regards to death penalty? So quickly, I should take out Article 72, Article 161, and make sure that I'm able to and I know it in and out. Also, if I want to ensure कि मुझे कुछ नहीं छोड़ना है, then I'll see what have been past judgments or Supreme Court judgments on death penalty, because they can ask me a question around that also. So a lot of questions now are very integrated, where maybe the first statement is an article and the second statement is a judicial judgment. So I need to prepare it. न्यूज में था ऐसे कितने टॉपिक हैं, 25 to 30 टॉपिक्स इफ यू प्रिपेयर यू आर सॉर्टेड. अभी इट्स लुकिंग लाइक अ बिग डील, बट वंस यू स्टार्ट डूइंग इट, these are the chapters that you have already done. All you have to do is to ensure that you don't miss it out when there is a question in your prelims examination. Then the MPs from southern India came up with this idea that winters बहुत ज़्यादा होते हैं Delhi में. It's harsh, cold winters. So let's have a session of the parliament in southern India as well, specifically when it's cold or too hot. So you should ask yourself, is that even permitted? And while you'll ask yourself this, you'll go back to Article 85. So this year in prelims, there can be question around Article 85 also. क्या कहता है Article 85? That the president can call the session as and when and at what place he or she may deem fit. So technically speaking, constitutionally speaking, there is no bar as to is it necessary that the parliament session has to be called in Delhi only? बिल्कुल भी जरूरी नहीं है. The only constitutional mandate according to Article 85 is the gap between the two sessions should not be more than 6 months, because at least two sessions have to be organized in a year. So constitutional mandate is this. Of course, conventionally, over the years, we are having parliament session in Delhi only because parliament is situated there. But the demand is not wrong. And that should take me back to Article 85 of the Constitution. So when I say link your static with current affairs, this is what I mean. Anything that you're reading in current affairs, make sure you know the static area of it by going back to your Lakshmikant and revising it. Then take a look at CAG, revise the chapter on CAG. We had the appointment of K. Sanjay Murthy, so go back and revise. See who appoints the CAG, what is the work of CAG, CAG कौन सी committee के साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं, what is the tenure of CAG, is CAG allowed to sit in parliamentary sessions or not. So my idea being, you should be very thorough with the chapter on CAG because there has been a recent appointment. Then this year we also saw the reconstitution of Interstate Council. So I'll go back and revise the chapter on Interstate Council as well. This list is not exhaustive. There can be 15 more topics that can be added here, and this we do when I teach you polity in your prelims 360 program. When we are revising our basics, we go back and connect it to our static area. And if you can do it for yourself, please do it, but make sure that you make a good list of these topics and connect it to your static preparation. All right, so this is what I meant by linking your current affairs to your static preparation. Now, let us talk about the doctrines and concepts that have been asked in recent times. And why do I call them the extra edge? Everybody is going to prepare Lakshmikant, everybody is going to prepare the two NCRTs. So, वो तो आपको करना ही है. That is where you start and you make sure you're very thorough with that part of your preparation. You have to do it very, very nicely. There is no compromise there. But let's say you are very thorough with Lakshmikant now, you're done with your NCRTs also, and you've mastered them. And now you have to make sure that you don't miss out on those two questions also, which perhaps are not asked from Lakshmikant, but are important and can be prepared if you're a little strategic in your preparation. So if you've noticed, there have been in previous year questions like, what do you mean by due process of law? Which not necessarily finds a conceptual mention in Lakshmikant. So I'm not saying due process of law likha hua nahi hai Lakshmikant mein, but maybe Lakshmikant has not given enough time in explaining the concept in detail. Or maybe the question on what do you mean by state, which is a very simplistic definition where when we start teaching polity, that's where we begin with. But perhaps Lakshmikant has not gone into the detail of what are the four components of state. So these questions which are around a specific a concept from Indian polity. For example, question on constitutional government, or maybe there was a question around limited government. One year there was a question around doctrine of harmonious construction, or maybe a question on doctrine of colorable legislation. These doctrines are not very exhaustively covered in your Lakshmikant. The concepts are not very exhaustively covered in your Lakshmikant. But the good thing is, these concepts do find a mention in the book. So, one source to cover them, of course, as I told you, is your political theory. But the doctrines are not covered there as well. So, I have not, came across a source that very exhaustively covers these doctrines. But the good thing is, a lot of content is available over the internet. A lot of YouTube videos are available. So, what you can do is you can list out these doctrines that you have to prepare, Google them, make short notes, and keep. And of course, if you sign up for the course, we do it for you, but you can do it on your own as well. So you Google it, you write 5 key points around that doctrine, and sort yourself up. For concepts, while you're reading your Lakshmikant, pay attention to these concepts given in Lakshmikant. For example, if due process of law is written, procedure established by law is written, the word natural justice is mentioned, you must know what is a parliamentary form of government, how it is different from presidential form of government, what is the key concept that is inherent in there, because those 2 3 questions that come up from these concepts can make you actually win the game. तो वो जो आपका एक बैटल रह जाता है एक क्वेश्चन से, that can be sorted if you take up these doctrines and concepts nicely. So I've tried to given you a list of these concepts that I'm talking about. Again, they are not exhaustive. You can add more to it, but this is just to give you an idea. What do you mean by republic? Ask yourself, do you know what is the meaning of republic? Are you sure to know that republic is a form of government where the head of the state is elected, whether directly or indirectly? So India is a republic. US is a republic. Do you know what do you mean by constitutional monarchy? UK is a constitutional monarchy. Do you know the difference between constitutional monarchy and absolute monarchy? Looks simple, but am I very clear as to what is the meaning of this particular word? Do I know what is constitutionalism and how is it different from constitution? Will I be able to answer a question on constitutional morality? By the way, again, a hint here, your mains paper can also guide you for your prelims paper. We miss out on this aspect of our preparation, but while you're revising, make sure you take a look at your GS paper 2, 2024 GS paper 2 also. Some areas from there can make a prelims question in your prelims 2025. This has happened before and this can happen again. For example, a question on constitutional morality may come up. Mains question might appear in your prelims. So you must know these terms. What do I mean by constitutionalism? How is it different from constitution? And what do you mean by constitutional government? Okay. Then of course I've mentioned some terms like sovereign, so ये तो सब लोग करते ही हैं, prepare any which way, but make sure that you kind of know them in and out. Parliamentary, presidential, you know the difference, etc., etc. These are some doctrines that I've listed. The latest edition of Lakshmikant, it seems, mentions these doctrines. बहुत बढ़िया, you can take it from there. My idea is just to tell you that you must know these doctrines. कहीं से भी करो, I don't have a problem. The point being, you should be able to cover them. So some of them I've listed in here. Again, the list is not exhaustive. If a doctrine is in news, make sure you know it in and out. In and out meaning you should know what is the meaning of it, and if there is an MCQ around it, you should be able to answer. This is what I mean by preparing doctrine. So I've seen people not doing doctrines, leaving doctrines. That is why I have mentioned that you should be thorough with doctrines as well. Concepts and doctrines, I call them as the extra edge because they help you answer those 2 3 questions which otherwise people miss out on if they only focus on, let's say, the core chapters of Lakshmikant. So easy to prepare them. If you don't have the latest edition also, they are very easily available over the internet. You can prepare them. And of course, if you are in the course, we do it together. All right, so I'll first take some questions and then I'll give you the concluding word on it. I'll start पीछे से and see when to use second ARC report. Use it in your mains now. And only go for the recommendations, the summary. And to cover पढ़ने की, I don't see the need. Sai says, Madam, I enrolled for the course, but I didn't study anything about polity yet. Is it okay to start now? Why not? Why not? The best time is the next best time is to start today. Please start from the word go. फिर मेंस का मेंस में देखेंगे. See, ideally you should have covered a good portion of your mains by now. But if not, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, what options do we have? Ma'am, do I need to go through with book 4 times, or it can be done reading note 4 times at least? See, Gaurav, again, I'm saying it might be, you might be a good learner and you might be able to do it in 2 times also. But my observation is to consolidate the facts, you at least read 4 readings. So in the first reading, you know the concept. Second reading, you mark the important facts in there. Third reading, you learn those facts. And fourth reading, you revise those facts. This is what I mean by 4 readings. Rishikesh, ma'am, in new Lakshmikant. Okay, if they're there, you can prepare it. The point being, you have to prepare. Politics in India since independence, should this be read? With the current trend, yes. If you can read it after these 3, you might want to pick up. There was a question this year on political parties. But then again, what I'll say is prioritize these 3 and take this politics in India since independence after you're done with these 3. Lot of people are talking about this book because this year there was a question about political parties which verbatim comes from there. But I would still say ordinary is awesome, so prepare the 3, and if you have some time left, then you move on to this. How should I make notes of Lakshmikant? You don't need to make notes of Lakshmikant. It is already written in a notes format. So it is absolute waste of your time to make notes out of it. However, you might want to highlight stuff there. You might want to take out key points and write it in the edges if you want to, or make sticky notes. But please don't take out another notebook and start reproducing it. उससे कोई फायदा नहीं है. Now, how do I utilize PYQs and mock tests? A very beautiful webinar on this was conducted by Sir Abhijit, which is, I think, available also on the YouTube channel. You might want to see it in detail. He has also talked about how common sense can help you answer some questions. So I highly recommend watching it if you have not done that already. But what do I want you to focus with regards to polity here? One is, please make sure you practice questions topic wise as well. For example, I am done with the chapter on president. It will take you 10 minutes to solve 5 questions from president. These can be PYQs or these can be some mock tests, whatever works for you. But make sure after you're done with a chapter from Lakshmikant or whatever sources you're referring to, you solve questions from that particular chapter. How this will help you is, it will help you identify the gap in your preparation. President chapter पढ़ लेने के बाद भी, if you were not able to answer a question on his impeachment, that means you should go back and revise the area on impeachment from your Lakshmikant. So make sure after you are done preparing a chapter, you go back and solve questions from that chapter also, and identify the gap and reread that gap as well. Point number 1. Second, compilations on current affairs can be very, very helpful. Let's say you have not been able to cover current affairs nicely. Polity current affairs आपके पूरे तैयार नहीं हुए हैं. So you can take up a compilation of polity current affairs last 6 months, last 1 year, ideally 1.5 year if you can do. बहुत अच्छा होगा अगर 2 साल कर सकते हो तो that's the best case scenario. So some of you are asking current affairs कितने. See, going by the current trend, 2 years current affairs are important. But again, we need to prioritize. 1 year, last 1 year should be very good. 1.5 year, moderate. 2 years should be again your last priority. So see at what stage of preparation you are in and then accordingly decide. But how you can use these current affairs compilation is, again, they can help you identify these core topics that I was talking about. So if there is a question in a current affairs compilation with regards to recusal of judges, I should go back and read about what does it mean. The question has been put up there because it must have been in news for one reason or the other. Or if RPA was in news, Section 8 RPA was in news and a question has been asked in a compilation, then I should go back and read it. So these compilations can come in very, very handy in identifying the important themes that have to be prepared. एक गलती और जो सब करते हैं, we don't focus a lot on our mistakes from PYQ and mock tests. So please make sure, some people would not read the not given in the question. And they will repeatedly make this mistake of not reading whether the question is asking correct or incorrect. And every year, you will see students who will miss out on 2-3 questions just because they were not able to read कि incorrect पूछ रहा था या correct पूछ रहा था. So if this is the mistake that you are doing, ask yourself that ये मुझे अब दोबारा नहीं करनी है. So have a diary of mistakes whereby you write that I have not been reading the question correctly and I've missed out on a question just because I was not alert enough in reading the text of the question. Also, if you repeatedly see that questions on majority आप गलत कर रहे हैं, you don't know what is effective majority, simple majority, special majority, repeatedly you're making mistake there, or you miss out on the electoral college of president every time, and that means that should be a red alert for you, and you write down these mistakes and you revise them while you are while you are getting into your revision mode. Finally, should you've been asking me, should we make notes? अगर notes सच में बनाने ना, you make out of your test series. How? I'll tell you. So test series will give you the question, the answer would be there, and there would be a detailed explanation of that answer, right? So please don't spend, please, it is impossible for you to come back to these sectional tests again. आपको लगता है you will come back to it, but वो नहीं हो पाता. It is actually not possible. So what you can rather do is quick bullet points which you learned new in that particular mock test, which you were not knowing before, which you had no idea about. Take quick short notes of it. Bullet points, ekdam bullet points in a A4 size sheet paper. At the end of it, you should have like 4-5 sheets, isse zyada nahi, which you can maybe even carry while you're traveling to your exam center and quickly revise through those bullet points that you have made. They can come in very, very handy and they can help you score those 3-4 marks, 3-4 questions extra in your prelims. All right. Here is a bonus tip. This year's Prelims 2024 saw a lot of questions from parts of the Constitution and from the text of the articles. तो कोई पूछ रहा था about PM Bakshi. I would want you to sit back and look at the index of the PM Bakshi for an hour today. 1 घंटा इसको देना and try to memorize all the parts of the Constitution. Take out PM Bakshi, look at what part 1 talks about, part 2 talks about, and memorize it. इसको करके रख लो, keep it separate. And memorize all the schedules of the Constitution. These are 2 areas that you should finish up in next 2 days, which should be a key takeaway from this particular webinar. If there is something that I want you to give me in return, is to prepare these 3 areas. How would I know, ma'am, what articles are important? आपने तो बोल दिया important articles कर लो, but how would I know? You would know. How? If an article is being talked about again and again, if the teacher is talking about it, if Lakshmikant is mentioning it again, if I see it in news, if I see Article 74 being talked about, Article 368, Article 2, Article 3, so you would definitely know articles which are important. आप क्या गलती करेंगे? You would think it is not important to look at them in Bare Act. But please spend time with your Bare Act and look at these articles in your Bare Act, at least the ones which have been in news for one reason or the other. So the bonus tip is schedules, paths, and important articles have to be prepared. I wind up everything for you. I kind of give you a overview of what we have discussed in today's session and kind of summarize everything for you. First thing first, why should you be prioritizing polity is because one, there are a lot of questions asked around polity, and second is these questions are doable. If you do your standard sources nicely, you are sorted. So what are the standard sources that we talk about? These 3 should be done. As I say, ordinary is awesome. Make sure your Constitution at Work, Political Theory, and Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant is prepared. Should I do India's Struggle for Independence? Do it when you're done with these 3. No problem. Very nice book, nicely written, easy to read, good language. And why not? If you can do it, why not? Make sure you use this handout that we provide you. The PDF will be available on the Telegram channel, whereby we have divided the topics into 3 sections: high priority, medium priority, low priority. Focus first on high priority topics. Please, this does not mean you don't have to do your medium and low priority. You have to do it, but be strategic. सबसे पहले high priority करा, sort हो गए उससे, then move to medium and then move to low priority. I have explained everything to you about the Prelims 360 program. If you still have any doubts about this program, you can write to the team with regards to, or you can actually log into the website as well and see for yourself what the course has to offer. don't miss out on current affairs. Make sure you revise the starting portion of these current affairs which are in news, because there's a trend of asking questions which look static but have some derivation from current affairs, and these are the predictable areas of your preparation. So focus areas from current affairs should be any bill, any act, any important judicial judgment that has happened in the past year, some schemes that have been talked about, any committee that has been formed, any commission that has been formed. If there has been some constitutional amendment, then you have to prepare that as well. I have given you some examples also, so that you know what do I mean when I say current affairs topics which can have static derivation. The extra edge has to be the doctrines and concepts that you should prepare. For example, there was a question on state, a question on constitutional government. I've also given you a list of these concepts, not exhaustive. There can be many more added to it. Similarly, you should prepare the doctrines as well. I heard that the latest, I still have the old edition, but if you have the latest edition and you can prepare it from there, do it. Finally, use your PYQs and mock tests nicely. Make sure you practice topic-wise questions as well. Make sure you take use of the current affairs compilation. Don't take your mistakes lightly, and make sure you have some revision points ready. The bonus tip is to focus on these three, that is schedules, parts, and important articles from the Constitution.